without detailing the exact expenditure lines. In addition, government spent a total of 2.77 billion Ghana cedis of oil money on new sectors without Parliament's prior approval as required by law. So on this morning's edition of Corruption Watch, we're going to ask how effectively Parliament is discharging its oversight responsibility in the utilization of Ghana's oil money in order to prevent corruption. So, of course, as you know, Corruption Watch is sponsored by Danida in collaboration with our partners Ghana Center for Democratic Development, that's CDD Ghana, Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII, Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, GACC, Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ACILA, and of course the multimedia platforms Joy FM and Adom FM. So we're available everywhere. You can engage us on Facebook. We are Corruption Watch Ghana. On Twitter, we are Corruption Watch or at CW Ghana. On Instagram, we are Corruption Watch _GH. On YouTube, we're Corruption Watch Ghana. The website, of course, is corruptionwatchghana.org. And here's the number you can reach us on. It's 055 22 000 33. Okay, it's the same for WhatsApp. 055 22 000 33. And the hashtag, as always, is Wanamoni or hashtag Ghana Abre. So Corruption Watch normally has 6 segments, but on this episode, we'll be dealing with one of those 6 segments. It's From the Source. Now, on the From the Source segment, we bring you interviews with actors involved in the case or the matter under discussion. And today on the show, we're blessed to have with us Professor Akosua Darkwa. Professor Akosua Darkwa is the Vice Chair of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PRAC. She represents think tanks on PRAC. And her work is mainly as an associate professor of sociology, and she's the current head of Department of Sociology at the University of Ghana. Welcome, Professor. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
With us as well this morning is Mr. Isaac Jamina. Now, he's the coordinator at the PRAC Secretariat. Mr. Jamina, it's a pleasure to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So, I told you earlier that government is facing an inquiry about what exactly it spent about 1.48 billion Ghana cedis of oil money on during the 2020 financial year. The scrutiny is coming from PRAC, and the committee has stated in their latest report that the Ministry of Finance said in their report that the utilized ABFA of 1.48 billion Ghana cedis was allocated to the road fund, road infrastructure, and closing expenditure gaps arising from COVID-19. However, and I'm quoting the Finance Ministry now, all the disbursements do not provide details of the... Sorry, that's actually the PRAC report I'm quoting. It says all the disbursements do not provide details of the projects and programs that were supported. This is in the annual report on the management and use of petroleum revenues for January to December 2020. The report is by PRAC. So ABFA, that's actually the annual budget funding amount. This is the proportion of oil money allocated to fund the annual budget. Okay. So we'll be speaking shortly to my 2 guests. Meanwhile, another highlight of the 2020 report is that the 2020 to 22 priority areas or new sectors selected for the ABFA disbursement were not presented to Parliament for approval in the 2020 budget statement and economic policy, as required by law, specifically the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So let's come to our guests, Professor Darkwa and Mr. Jamina. First of all, let me ask you to help us situate the role of PRAC in ensuring the effective use of Ghana's petroleum revenue.
All right. Kojo, thank you, and good morning to your cherished listeners. I think let me start this way. Ghana has been a blessed country with many natural resources. Gold in particular was the point of attraction that brought many European countries, Portugal and the others, to the then Gold Coast to prospect and make benefit out of the resource. For over 100 years plus, Ghana has produced and sold gold. But in the year 2000, we were compelled to declare the nation a highly indebted poor country, rather unfortunately. And so when in 2007, God blessed the nation with the discovery of petroleum in commercial quantities, the leaders at the time, civil society, development partners, everybody thought that there should be a shift in paradigm. Our approach should be different. So the management and use should not be left entirely in the hands of political leadership. Civil society, citizens must get involved. And so discussions around the governance of the resource started in 2007, traveled through till the passage of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act in 2011. Duties were assigned to institutions in the act, but differently from previous was the need to create a body that sits outside of government, whose membership is not from government. It's more like pictures. It's a macrocosm of the society. National House of Chiefs, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Queen Mothers Association, Labor, AGI, Chamber of Commerce, Ghana Bar Association, a 13-member institution that was created. And it was given a 3-point mandate by the Act. When you look at Section 52 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the Act assigns 3 specific duties. First, the PRAC is to monitor compliance with the Act by the institutions that have been assigned duties by the Act. Then secondly, the committee is to create a platform for citizens to debate whether their spending prospects are in line with development priorities. So, and then thirdly, the committee is to provide independent assessment of the management and use of the petroleum revenues. So in accordance with this, the committee has been publishing reports as required by the Act. A report that covers January to June every year to be published by the 15th of September, and an annual report that covers January to December by the 15th of March the ensuing year. So PRAC is really more like a shift in paradigm in the management and use of the nation's resource, particularly oil and gas.
Okay, so walk us briefly through the means by which PRAC accounts to the people of Ghana, on whose behalf, obviously, we are working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, I mean, sitting here is one of them, right? We are speaking to the nation, both those in Ghana and those abroad, telling them about the reports that we do and the content of that report. We do the reports every year, 2 of them. And when we are done, we make sure that the public knows about it. So we share that information online on our websites. We share a print version to different institutions. And then we have consultations across the country. So we've done over 100 so far. We go at regional level, district level, and have a conversation with ordinary Ghanaian citizens who are quite happy to hear about what happens with our oil. Right. Because as I pointed out, we don't quite know what happens with gold, even though we've mined gold since the 1800s. We don't know what happens with our cocoa, in the detail that we do know what happens with our oil.
Right. Tell me about how the state and even the petroleum sector operators, how they respond to the information that comes out of PRAC.
Okay. So I will say that the relationship between PRAC and state actors and the institutions for that matter, relationship has been progressive. As I look back at 2011 when the committee came into existence across till 2021 when the committee is 10 years. And I can say without any shadow of doubt that we've traveled, we've traversed a path. We've seen growth in relationship. There's more cooperation, there's better understanding of the mission of the committee. And the relationship between us is getting better and better. When it comes more specifically to requesting for data from these institutions, it's been getting better and better. When it comes to meeting them over the recommendations that the reports make, because we do not just want to be producing reports, but the report should lead to policy change, should lead to better management of the resource for the benefit of the citizens who are the real owners of the resource. So you get, for example, we have a quarterly meeting with the Ministry of Finance where we discuss the findings and recommendations of the report. We look at ways of implementing them to be able to govern the resource and its management better and better. So I'll say with certainty that the relationship between the committee and the institutions is getting better and better.
That's good to know. Let's hone in now on the actual report for 2020. What would you say the key findings were? Any of them you found surprising?
Okay, so I think there will be two that I would speak on, and I can pick up on others. One was the fact that every number of years, the Minister of Finance is supposed to decide what the key priority areas are going to be in terms of where they are going to spend the money. Ideally, we should have a long-term national development plan, and based on that plan, we will know where we are trying to get in 50 years. So what are we doing now in order to reach where we want to reach in 50 years? We don't have that. So it's the Minister of Finance who then has the responsibility of deciding what the priority areas are going to be. But that needs to be taken to Parliament for approval. For some reason, last year, that didn't happen. So that was one of the surprising things. I think the other surprising thing was that the ABFA is not supposed to be used to fund expenditure gaps. We have the priority areas, so that's where the money is supposed to go. And last year, we found that that didn't quite happen as well. So for me, those are the two things that were surprising.
Yes, but Professor Dakwa, so when you found out, I know you've been engaging with the Ministry of Finance, did they tell you the priority areas where they invested the annual budget funding amount?
Yes.
For 2020. I mean,
yes.
That was not presented in the budget, but when you spoke to them, did they tell you what areas they chose?
Yes, they've given the areas.
And what are those areas, for instance?
So from 2017 to 2019, let me say that the default position of the law is that the ABFA should be applied guided by a national development plan.
Right.
In the absence of that, or before we get to the point where we now have the document, the PRMA stipulates that out of 12 areas stated in the Act, the minister is to select not more than 4. So the minister can select just one over a 3-year period. So in 2017, it was time to select. It just coincided with the coming into power of the current government. And so they selected agriculture, they selected education, they selected health, and then they selected critical infrastructure and service critical infrastructure in roads and rail. Okay. So those are the 4. So in 2020, it was time to select new priority areas for the period 2020 to 2022. And the expectation was that these would be selected, presented to Parliament for approval before the ABFA would be allocated to these areas. In the 2020 budget, PRAC did not find this. So we checked in the mid-year review and we didn't find that. In preparing the 2020 semi-annual report, the committee was informed by the ministry of the 4 priority areas the ministry has selected for 2020 to 2022, which are agric is maintained, education and health has been combined, now industrialization has been introduced, and then critical infrastructure in road, rail has also been maintained. So the new introduction is industrialization.
Right. And they have combined
Education and health. I mean, I'm just listing them, but I mean, these are areas to be interrogated. Education is heavy. The funding of free senior high school infrastructure and all that is one. Health, health infrastructure, the national health insurance, and all that is also that, but it's been combined. We leave that.
You leave that to them, because if they were separate in 2017 to 2019, for instance, and they are combined, it's just like a nice way of making it 5 priority areas. But that's not for you to answer. Yeah, of course, but that's not for you to answer. So we'll pick those issues with the
That's
ministry later on.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, you pointed out in the 2 areas you highlighted that one of them was the fact that they spent some of that, some of the ABFA on a funding gap, which the law really doesn't say they can do. Would that apply even if the funding gap is in one of the 4 key areas? Would they still not be allowed?
Okay, so let's look at it this way. The framers of the Act knew of the volatile nature of petroleum revenues, that in 1 year you could have prices as high as $140, but then something could happen in the industry that may be geopolitical. It may not even be related to the industry. You could just hear that, just for example, America is preparing to go to Iraq or something.
Right.
Then prices could plummet from 140 to, let's say, 10. And this heavily impacts on revenue. And so in providing for funding in the budget, the Act also made a buffer. Let me use a layman's word of a buffer in the Ghana Petroleum, in the Ghana Stabilization Fund.
Right.
That should revenue fall so low because of price and quantity, the stage should fall on the Ghana Stabilization Fund to smoothing expenditure, so that we will not have the situation where today we have 5 billion to spend in the budget, and the next year we fall to 2 billion to spend, to have smooth. Now, in the year 2017 to 2019, PRAC, I think, raised in our annual reports that the ABFA had not been fully spent. For 2017, we had a balance carried into 2018, carried into 2019. And in our engagements with the ministry, we had sought to know the usage of these unspent ABFA. The ministry had indicated graciously that these had earmarked projects, so they were not funds that were just there. They had projects in mind. It was just that they had not reached the point of disbursement. So we're contracting process. When we get to the point where monies need to be disbursed, they will be disbursed. And so we had that understanding. We had also been looking forward to accountability of the funds whenever they were utilized. So in 2020, when we're preparing the report, we received a report from the ministry. We realized that out of the 1.48 billion Ghana cedis, 827 million had been put back into the budget to more like cover the gap that had arisen because of the COVID pandemic. Now, this is against the law, because this job is what the Stabilization Fund was created to do. And in fact, the law does not did not envisage that monies put into the budget would not be fully spent.
Right.
And that is why it did not create room for how it should be utilized if it is not spent, or how it should be managed. The Act assumed that if monies are put into the budget, they will certainly be utilized and not be left unutilized. So it was left unutilized, so we accumulated 1.48 billion. The rest, I think in your introduction, you indicated that part went to the road fund and all that. PRAC has spoken about it in the report. So what PRAC is actually saying here is that the purpose for the creation of the Ghana Stabilization Fund is not fulfilled here.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, but just a way of clarification. So I know that when we are accounting for these in our public accounting, if we decide we're going to spend this amount of money
Yes.
on a particular project, in our vote book, we would actually credit that particular sector and say, we are spending this amount here. So when you pick the accounts, you would know, for instance, the earmarked projects. Did we see the projects that the 1.48 billion was earmarked for?
As far as PRAC is concerned, no.
Okay.
And this is part of the findings of that you've highlighted in this report, that
Yes.
those specific projects were not named. Am I right?
Yes. So let me be a
Yes,
bit
clarify.
clearer here. So are we talking about the 1.4 billion as then
Yes, so
put
the
into
1.
the budget
So
or
the
as in
1.48
the
billion
2020?
then, I'm just asking you because you talked about the fact that then when you inquired, they told you, oh, these are earmarked projects,
Yes.
and so it's not time for them. But when you come to my understanding, and the accountancy, the vote book will tell you, for instance, okay, so this is how much we're going to spend in this particular sector. You credit it and say, this is going here.
Yes.
And then if for any reason you change your mind and you want to take that money again, you would debit that particular credit you made earlier and go and credit another place.
Okay.
That will lead to a bit of environment.
Okay.
But that's simple. So I'm saying that, I'm asking that, if it's for earmarked projects, you should see in the accounting books that this is supposed to go here. That's why I'm asking whether when you checked from the finance ministry, when they told you the amounts that you said were unaccounted for, did we check and did we see that they were for specific project A and B as they told you, or we're just told that these are for earmarked projects which has not begun, and so that was the end of it?
The latter is the case.
Right.
We were just told that they are earmarked funds. That we have not reached the stage of disbursement. So when the funds are disbursed, so whenever we use unaccounted for, let's also add unutilized to be fair to the ministry, that it was not just unaccounted for, it was also not utilized. So it is when we have utilized that we can account.
Yeah, because, so you see, the point is that you allocate before you disburse.
Yes.
And so you should see the allocation.
Yeah.
That's been allocated to this side. And it will be used for this project because the budget would actually indicate what they intend to do. And it would give you the total amount. And so I'm just thinking maybe we could have just found that out from the ministry. It would have made our job easier so that we can just go back and say, well, you said you're going to do this. What happened? These projects, have they begun? Have they not begun? And it would have made it easier for us. But I'm sure subsequently we'll get into all of that.
Sure. Sure.
All right, if you just joined us, we're on Corruption Watch, and our guest, Professor Akosua Darkwa, is the Vice Chair of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. She's here with Mr. Isaac Dramina, who is the coordinator of the PRAC Secretariat, and we're learning all about their 2020 report of what was done with our oil money, and we're learning what the significant findings were and whether any of them are raising particular concern for PRAC. Now, as we continue with that discussion, I want to focus a little bit on the job of Parliament in all of this, okay, and how effective or otherwise their oversight role is being played. This is in relation to your finding that neither the government's 2020 budget statement nor the 2020 mid-year budget review presented the new priority areas for parliamentary approval, okay, as they did in 2017. So, I mean, I'm wondering how this could have escaped the scrutiny of the members of Parliament. So, to put that into context, let's listen to the Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, Mr. Alban Bagbin, who spoke recently about the oversight role of Parliament at the inauguration of the Parliamentary Services Board. In fact, this was just yesterday.
How efficient and effective is our Parliament? One of the areas that our Parliament has not fared well is oversight and private members' legislation. Even though the performance and effectiveness of Ghana's Parliament continue to be rated high internationally, its rating in the area of oversight is unsurprisingly low. I say it is unsurprising because Parliament and its committees lack the needed support and assistance to perform their oversight functions. I had calls in March this year to call out the Minister of Finance and the Secretary to the President for attempting to unilaterally place a ceiling on the budget appropriation for Parliament and the judiciary. I must admit, this unfortunate development has been the practice of almost all the governments since the beginning of the Fourth Republic. This development has undoubtedly affected the capacity of Parliament to effectively and efficiently perform its oversight duties. I admit that there has been some modest improvement in the appropriation for Parliament by successive governments, but it is still far inadequate to meet the optimal requirements of the House. In fact, there is no year that Parliament had even 1% of the total revenue of the country as an arm of government, not a ministry, an arm of government. The same for the judiciary.
That was the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, talking about the difficulties Parliament has in providing their oversight responsibility. Now, Prof, as the Vice Chair of PRAC, do you agree with the Speaker that MPs are weak in their oversight role?
Well, I think what happened last year is an example of that, right? This is something that's supposed to be presented before Parliament and approved, and it didn't happen. Why it didn't happen, I mean, we can speculate to why that was the case. I think the Honorable Speaker of Parliament makes a good case for the fact that if you don't have the resources and the support, then you have difficulty. But the surprising thing, though, is that 3 years before that, so in 2017, this was done. So something must have happened between 2017 and 2020 that allowed for that mishap to occur. I can't explain why that happened. I think it was unfortunate that that did happen. And whatever needs to be done to ensure that that doesn't happen again needs to be done.
Kojo, let me add that the ministry has offered some explanation. I mean, in the compilation of the report, the PRAC was informed by the ministry that the style and the way they presented it in 2017, they decided to depart from that style in 2020. In 2017, when you read the budget, you will see clearly in a paragraph where the priority areas are listed. And then the minister puts before Parliament, we present this for approval. And then when the budget is approved, the priorities are approved and then allocations are made. In 2017, the approach is different. When you go through the budget, 2020, thank you, you don't find that. It is rather when you go to Appendix 5 of the budget that you find the ABFA allocated to ministries, departments, and agencies, not in priority areas. So then you would see Ministry of Roads allocated this much, maybe with the intention that it will be used for funding road projects. Ministry of Education allocated this much, maybe with the intention that it will be used to fund the free SHS or something like that. So that is the explanation the ministry has offered. I just said that to
Okay. Now, I mean, during the debate, during the discussions on the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, I remember the time that Muntaka Mubarak Mohammed was the one who, proposed a national development plan of, using the funds to actually fund specific plans. So the whole idea of, priority areas is to go for key projects that we can fund or, execute, so that at the end of it all would say, these are the things that we got from our petroleum revenue. I mean, I remember then I was in Parliament as a correspondent. So I remember, all the debates around it. Now, in the past, PRAC has had concerns to complain about how it's thinly spread when it comes to petroleum revenue or the annual budget funding amount. I'm just curious, those concerns that you've raised in previous report, has anything been done about it? Has it changed? Has the trend changed from what you complained about previously?
On this specific case of the thin spread, no. In fact, last year, I think there were about 4,000 different projects on which the monies were spent. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the monies were equally spent. So it's not as if they took the amount, divided it by 4,000, and gave each of the 4,000 projects the same amount. So if you look critically, some got a lot more, others got very little. So that continues to be one thing that, and in our recommendations, we do point out that it would be nice if we focused on a few flagship, so that we can say at the end of our 30 years of oil or 40 years of oil, look, here are the things that we got out of oil. Of course, free SHS is funded largely by oil revenue, right? So for those children who are enjoying the free SHS, for the parents who are enjoying the free SHS, we can look back and say, well, here's what we did with our oil money in that sense. The Terminal 1 building at the new airport, the Terminal 3 building at the new airport is also one that, I mean, these days we don't fly anywhere, but if you were flying somewhere, you could go there and say this is a flagship.
Terminal 3 actually was funded by the Ghana Airport Company Limited. They borrowed money on their accounts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're using that.
Yes.
And they're paying. And that's why they have a challenge. I don't know. But that's
Yeah.
what the Ghana Airport Company Limited, if you go on their books now, that's what you find.
Find,
They are paying for it.
Yes. So there's $30 million of petroleum revenue in the funds, which was contributed by the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
So
So that's what we
mean.
are referring to.
So let me ask this. I mean, the committee is supposed to spearhead the accountability of the money that we make from oil and how it's used. Is there scope within the law for you to advise on how it should be spent in advance? Or do you only come in after it's been spent to seek accountability? Can, for example, the finance ministry come to you and say, look, we want to choose our 4 key areas. Based on the reports you've done so far, which areas do you think would be best for us to go into? Could they do that?
Well, I suppose they could if they wanted to do that, but I don't think that within the law they are required to do that. So this would be something that they would decide they wanted to do. But we as PRAC are not mandated to provide the advice on which ones they choose. Our job is, in essence, after the fact.
Right.
After you choose, our job is to make sure that you do as you said, not to tell you what you're supposed to do beforehand.
Okay, so you wouldn't, for instance, now that you know the 4/5 areas that they are seeking to go into for the next 3 years, it wouldn't be within your remit, for instance, to have a look at what has been done in these areas so far, to see which, once you know the specific projects they want to spend money on, to look at them and say, oh, well, these ones would be high impact, these ones perhaps, you wouldn't be able to give that sort of advice in advance?
Well, Ojo, maybe not in a stricter sense, but I think that collaboration can get this to work rather than to look at it from the legal point. In 2016, PRAC did 61 district engagements, public meetings. And because 2017 was a year for selection of new priority areas, we did those engagements and had this question also running in each of the engagements. We asked the people of Ghana, which 3 areas would you consider to be the most important for the investment of the petroleum funds? And we had them rate them. We had agric as number 1. We had education. Then we had health. Then we had industry. So we rated these and then generated a report and presented it to our stakeholders. Put it all on our website as well. It just happened that in the manifestos of the political parties, we realized that their manifestos for the utilization of the ABFA had picked these opinions we had sampled from the people of Ghana. And so it was no surprise that in 2017, when the government came into power, we found agric in the priority areas. We found health in the priority areas. We found education in the priority areas. So even though the law may not require us to advise in the sense you mean, collaboration can get this to work, especially when PRAC's mandate is to interface with the people of Ghana, get their views on how the petroleum revenues are being managed. Certainly, PRAC will have sampled a lot of views from citizens to be able to feed into the policy of the management of
So
the
I
EBFA.
think the way to think about it is this a PRAC as in the institution's responsibility, or is it citizens' responsibility? And I think the beauty of PRAC is that it serves as an interface between the state and the citizens. And when we do the public engagements, the idea is to set up a situation where PRAC informs and then the citizens use that information to engage the state as well. So it's not, in a sense, I'm saying we shouldn't just have a 2-pronged approach. It's the state and PRAC. It should be 3, maybe even 4, right? The media also serves as one of the actors in saying, these are the things that we find important, we find useful for us. Can we have a conversation about that? Then it's not a one-off kind of conversation that happens between PRAC and the state every so often. But it's something that we are discussing, and then the state actors can hear us.
Yeah.
And when it's time to implement, then they can incorporate that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I was asking that question earlier is because I'm interested in what PRAC's recommendations would be. There's a lot of there are a lot of issues around the use of the ABFA. So, what would PRAC's recommendations be? To government on how to utilize ABFA.
Well, we would say with certainty that the National Development Plan should be developed. It is the default position of the law. Just so that we don't get hooked to political manifestos, manifestos of the political parties, so that if a particular political party thinks that the nation should go this way, we end up going that way, we utilize resources. We should be directed by the plan we have all agreed to have as a people. Then, if a political party wants to implement to this extent, so be it, it's the same plan. Then, so that is PRAC's first position on the utilization of the ABFA. We should have a national development plan that should guide the usage. Then, the thin spread Prof spoke about is one of the recommendations the committee has made. We should identify a few projects, even if one priority area is selected and key projects are identified. Let me just use, for example, for purposes of this discussion, we have identified that there's need to do dual carriageway from Accra to Kumasi, Accra to Ho, Accra to Cape Coast, Takrady. We just utilize the ABFA for a particular year, if it is enough, to do just this dual carriageway. Or we have identified the need for railway from Accra to Paga, or to link up with Burkina Faso. We just dedicate the ABFA for this year to do that, so that when it is completed, just like he intimated, we can point to this and say that the ABFA for year 20, whatever, was used for this. And future generations can always point to this as evidence of the utilization of the ABFA for that particular year.
Wonderful. Okay.
And that's something that if you look at our reports over the years, we keep talking about. I think you made mention of that, that fact too,
We're talking with Professor Akosua Darkwa. She's the Vice Chair of PRAC. She's here with Mr. Isaac Jamina, who's PRAC's Secretariat Coordinator. And you've made it clear that actually you do make these recommendations in your reports. You do 2 reports a year, and there are recommendations in there. Are you able to track government's implementation of your recommendations? How are they doing with that?
Yes, so we've tracked. So we came into existence in 2011. This year marks our 10th year. And we've made recommendations since then. And we actually have a percentage that we can put on it, right? So we can say 63% of the recommendations we've made have been adhered to or approved and taken on and reflects in what happens later. But of course, that means there's 37% also that doesn't get adhered to. So you can look at it as either your glass is half empty or half full. But while we're at it, let me just indicate some of the ones that we made and have actually been taken on board. So one was the need for the PRMA regulations. So we had the Act, but an Act needs to go with its regulations. So we recommended that as far back as 2012, and the regulations have come into force. So that's one that we are quite proud of. The other one is to say the major actors in the oil field, oil sector, Jubilee, Tain, and so on, they should have a loss of production insurance scheme, so that we also talked about GNPC and its corporate social investments, and said you need to sort of stick to your core areas and not go into too many of the other things. So if you remember, the contract with the Black Stars was abrogated as a result of us saying, can you please stick to your core areas and not spend too much on CSI? We've also had the surface rentals from the different companies go up. So not all of them are paying, but the majority of them are paying what they need to pay with respect to that. We've also had a tax audit of the major companies and Adalco and so on. So GRA has taken that on, has done the tax audits, and has retrieved quite a substantial amount of money from that. So, but then thin spread, that still hasn't happened, for example. Yeah.
For instance, yeah. Listen, this has been very enlightening. Thank you so much for first of all, for working so hard on the report. Winston has
Yes, but
something.
finally, just a way of suggestion to PRAC also, that sometimes, maybe next time they can get, when government says they are earmarked projects and we're going to spend this amount, you could actually look at those earmarked projects, see, because they normally should, allocate funds to it so that it becomes part of your reporting and not just taking it and say, oh, government says this, and that's the end of it.
Well taken.
Okay, well
Thank
taken.
you for that.
And thank you for making the time to be with us here on Corruption Watch. Professor Akusia K. Dakwa is the Vice Chair of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PRAC. She represents think tanks on that committee. She's also an Associate Professor of Sociology and the current Head of the Department of Sociology at the University of Ghana. And Mr. Isaac Jamina is the very hard-working coordinator at the PRAC Secretariat. Thank you both very much for being with us. Of course, Corruption Watch wants to empower you. So we are all in our small way helping in the fight against corruption. So please reach Corruption Watch on our hotline, which is 055 22 000 33, or send a WhatsApp to the same number, 055 22 000 33, with any information that you think might help in the fight against corruption. Of course, Corruption Watch is brought to you by the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII, Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, GACC, the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ACELA, and of course, the multimedia platforms Joy FM and Adom FM. The main sponsor is Danida, and we're back in 2 weeks with even more from Corruption Watch.
And keep your text messages and your tweets coming to us. Text messages on the Super Morning Show, brought to us by the Glyco Critical Illness Plan, GSIP. It's in your best interest to survive. And you know, at Glyco Life, we believe this is the time to protect your future with our life insurance policies, and our products are designed to offer you peace of mind, especially in this COVID-19 era. So, to our policyholders, your claims are very important to us, and we advise you to visit our offices or the Glyco Life website, glycolife.com, to lodge your claims for prompt service. We're surviving COVID-19 together, so please pay your premiums via your chosen mode of payment or by Momo on 0591 441473 or by e-premium for microinsurance to safeguard your policies. Our call center team is ready to support you, so call us now on 0202 222 113 for assistance or contact us via our digital channels. We care for your safety, so all our offices are implementing the Ghana Health Services recommended COVID-19 protocols. Please practice social distancing, stay safe, and trust Glyco Life to cushion you for life.
For life. All right. Now, I hope you've heard that the planned city extension project, Rent to Own, is now in Ghana and getting better and better. So this Rent to Own land and house ownership scheme is by Ningo Pram District Assembly, NIPDA, and its partners. It's supported by the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development and the UN Habitat. So look, be smart, because where you live matters, where you trade matters. You can now own a home and or a fully serviced commercial land or space now. Wait a minute though, don't forget to join their affiliate housing cooperatives. Apply now for the special Lifeline offer, which lasts up to 31st of October 2021. Here are some numbers to call: 05555 30 300 or 05779 1101. You can also try 05570 54635, and the website is newaccra.city. Planned City Extension Project, shaping Ghana's urban future. Now let me tell you about something that's going to happen right after the Super Morning Show. The Ghana School of Law presents the 16th edition of the Akoto Memorial Lectures under the theme The Legacy of Balfour Osei Akoto, a family man, chief and statesman. The event, which is organized every year as part of activities marking the SRC Week, celebration of Ghana School of Law. So it's on Wednesday the 28th, that's today, at Great Hall KNUST from 10 a.m. The keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Owusu Efriye Akoto, who's the Minister for Food and Agriculture. The special guest of honor will be Professor Aaron Mike Okwe, who's the former Speaker of Parliament, and other dignitaries include Mr. Maxwell Upukwajiman. He's the Acting Director of Legal Education and Ghana School of Law. Also, the renowned economist Mr. Kwame Pienim will be there. This event is under the auspices of His Lordship Justice Inini Yabua, who's the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, and the management of the Ghana School of Law. A major highlight of the event will be the reenactment of the famous case Re Akoto and 7 others. This program will be broadcast live on Joy News, Joy FM, and all its social media handles. Stay tuned for that. Kicks off after the 10 o'clock bulletin on the Super Morning Show. Some messages now.
The cousin that hogs all the food. The relative who's always late.